This kind of backlash happens so fast now because of social media. And, Adam, I know you've been involved with the Comedy Store for a long time, but when Louis jumped up at the Comedy Cellar the other night, a couple weeks ago, the Cellar's taken a lot of heat from people who are not necessarily customers.
Right.
People
Yeah.
on, the other side of the country or whatever. And we didn't, we never had that kind of thing happen before.
No.
Well, I'll tell you this,
Yeah.
and I did not know this, and maybe you do. Comedians have gone up against Louis.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was talking to some
Comedians have said this guy should not be able to ever perform again.
Yeah, I mean, they all come.
If you're a murderer, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
go.
sorry. I'm sorry. But if you're a murderer, you go to jail, and they let you off, 20 years later, and you try to get a job as a busboy. And if the guy says, "I'm not hiring that guy, he murdered," and you go, but he did his penance, and now you give him a job. That's the humane thing to do. And people go, "Well, what about the murdered person?" And you go, "Well, of course he got worse.
Yeah,
the guy that lost his life, he's doing worse." But it doesn't mean you can't forgive or it's impossible to forgive. I also don't feel anyone owes me an apology in public. I think personally that you owe an apology to anybody that you did ill to. You owe an apology to people that your actions hurt in a financial way or an emotional way. But nobody owes me an apology,
So that's where your shock about comedians comes from.
Yeah, because I don't understand why they're so, I guess I just don't understand how there can be no rules,
Mm-hmm.
If the rules are drawn out and set down, then that's one thing. But, I always thought the audience would decide whether you're an objectionable comic or even a good comic, And so Louis went up here at the Comedy Cellar, and the audience let him know. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. But if the audience don't like him, then the club won't book him. I mean, that's how things work. And, just because your heart can break for more than one person at the same time, and a person can do a bad thing and you can feel sorry for that person while feeling worse for the person that had the bad thing done to them. This is all so self-evident. It's hard for me to unpack, but I wanted to use the word unpack.
Well, we also always think of comedians being 100% free speech and stuff like that. And I don't know whether you followed this at the New Yorker Festival, but they had Steve Bannon booked to come in and do an interview, and all the big comedians said, "I'm not going to be there if somebody interviews Steve Bannon." And it wasn't a thing of, hey, we're giving an award to Steve Bannon,
Right.
but it was a chance for somebody from the New Yorker to interview him, and who knows what direction that would have went into. But people like Judd Apatow and I'm trying to think of who, Patton Oswalt I know was in it, and even Jimmy Fallon, they all said, well, we won't perform. We won't come and do the panel. And I'm always surprised by that angle.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel, my brother's a foreign correspondent, and he did a 4-year documentary on neo-Nazis, and he interviewed all of the neo-Nazis in the world, from the Ernst Zundel all the way up to David Irving, and he didn't become a Nazi, at all.
Right.
And so I think people go, I certainly wouldn't be a Nazi by hearing this, but Americans, other than me, Americans are just people that will believe whatever they hear. And I think that's nonsense, I think that if there was a Nazi, a person could go watch him because it seems like an entertaining thing, Just the same way you listen to a guy screaming on the corner of the street. You stop and listen to him.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I would agree with you, except for I learned from your show that Adam was in a cult for 3 years. So I guess some people are easily molded.
I just want to stress it was not a Nazi cult.
These cult leaders,
Yeah.
they have a good gig going.
Yeah, yeah.
And they all fall for the same trap, which is they start fucking everybody.
Yeah.
And if
I
you
was
just,
not in that cult
Yeah.
either.
you have a good life.
Yeah.
People show up. They give you all your worldly
everything.
goods. You got
Yeah.
all the money, and then you start having sex with the ladies. Then, drunk with power, you're not even gay. You start having sex with the men as well, and and then people go, "Hey, I was watching Fred fuck your wife the other day, and I was thinking, any chance he's not Jesus?"